What is up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of the Oscars, the podcast that takes a look at the 2024 Oscars 24 minutes at a time. I am Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are deciding our truths as we discuss Justine Triet's Oscar-nominated film, Anatomy of a Fall.
A woman is suspected of her husband's murder, and their blind son faces a moral dilemma as the main witness. We are on to Best Picture number 6 of our journey into the Best Picture race this year for the Academy Awards. Of course, we have a guest on for this episode, as we do for all of our Best Picture episodes. We've got Jonathan, better known as The Film Drunk, on YouTube, on Twitter, on all the places, joining us to talk about this film. Jonathan, welcome to the pod, man. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. I'm better than the husband is doing. So I'm great, ready to go.
It's true.
Just blasting 50 Cent all day, just ready to go.
That's right. Good song choice.
Incredible song choice. I'm really excited to get into this movie because I think there's a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot to break down. There's a lot of questions that we can ask and kind of dissect and figure out maybe what it all means and if Sandra actually did it or not. And of course, we're going to get into that. We'll talk about our feelings for the film as we go. But I want to start with how we start every episode of our Best Picture journey here. Jonathan, we always ask our guests their relationship to the Academy Awards. So do you watch on a yearly basis? Do you predict? Do you follow the precursors, or do you not really care about the Oscars?
Yeah, unfortunately, I care a lot. I do. I pay attention to the precursors more than I'd like to admit. Mm-hmm. There's predictions. That's kind of how my following got started, I guess. I made a YouTube channel, didn't tell anyone. I was just putting random stuff out. And I'd like to be consistent, so I wanted to have something every week at least. I did predictions. It was like 50 minutes long. I said, this is my worst video I've ever done. No one is ever going to watch this. And surprisingly, that was like the first video that hit like 1,000 views. So I was like, nice. I guess there is a niche there. So I do. I know it can be a little competition-y, which some people don't like with, art, which I totally get, and that's fair. It just helps, I guess, if you try to look at it more as like good people, well, hopefully good people getting recognized. I think that is a good thing more oftentimes than not. But yeah, I had a meltdown last year, like when Babylon lost score. So I care too much sometimes, but yeah.
I'm with you. I'm still recovering from that, honestly.
Oh yeah.
It's just never going to leave my head.
I dream about it.
Yeah, it's I dream in the Babylon score for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we care a lot on this pod as well, and the precursors are interesting because as the Academy Awards have evolved, there's more precursors, and as social media has evolved, we have more access to these precursors and like what they mean and what they are and like who wins these exceptionally niche awards in Texas or Utah or California, film, whatever. So I think there's a lot of information out there. I am curious. I'm just going to ask you where you stand on this. And I know this isn't the topic of the pod, but Lily Gladstone has been cleaning up in the precursors. Mm. Emma Stone wins the Golden Globe. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a race there? Do either of you think that we've got a race on our hands now?
I think there's a race there. I think we'll see what do we have left. SAG,
SAG and BAFTA.
BAFTA, yeah. So I think it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens with those two. But it feels like Lily still has the edge, in my opinion. But I don't know. I think there's still a race there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a race there. As it stands now, I don't know. It's weird. It kind of feels like the repeat of last year with Cate Blanchett and Michelle Yeoh.
It does.
So
yeah.
I know it's a little different and nothing is ever a one-to-one comparison, I know. But, last year, Michelle Yeoh and Cate Blanchett both won the Globes. And then even though Everything Everywhere was cleaning up all those awards, Cate Blanchett still took home the Critics' Choice. And I feel like most people assumed that Lily Gladstone was going to win the Critics' Choice. And Lily Gladstone won't be nominated for a BAFTA. She isn't nominated, I should say. Yeah. So SAG is kind of her last chance to hopefully win, go on stage, give a good speech. So I think that is, at least as it stands now, one of the more interesting races for sure.
Yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago, even I was, I was feeling pretty confident in Lily and just like going home with the award. As the Oscars get closer, I think the Best Actress race is turning out to be one of the more fascinating races. We're going to talk about what I think is kind of one of the more competitive and fascinating races with Anatomy of a Fall, and we're going to kind of cover all these categories. But I'll do a quick pulse check. Is there any wild things, Jonathan or Ben, that you're hoping to see take place this year at the Oscars? Because we record these kind of every week as we get closer, and I know that our opinions and thoughts on people and movies change every week when we record, and I'm curious, like, what are we going to put on our stone this week to say, like, this is the crazy thing that we think is going to happen?
Oh man, I have no idea. I mean, the first thing I think is I want some Royal Rumble style entry from the Iron Claw for Best Picture to come in at number 11 and just be there for that. But I don't know. There's so much that could happen. Supporting actor could be really interesting. Something could happen there that I think might be kind of surprising because RDJ seems to be cleaning up, but I feel like there's some good people there as well. And same with just like actor, Giamatti's been getting some wins here or there, so it's not necessarily Cillian's locked up. So I think there's some wild stuff that could happen.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not sure about the Oscars. It's always so hard to predict a surprise, but as it stands, Cillian Murphy, Giamatti each have a Globe. Giamatti won the Best Actor award at the Critics' Choice, even though Oppenheimer won what felt like everything else. Stuff like that was telling. So in my mind, I'm not even rooting for this necessarily because the movie's like okay to me. I know Maestro is a very heated movie.
Let's go. You gonna pull a win out for Maestro here on the pod?
Not even necessarily that. I think the movie's solid, but I think it would be very funny if right now everyone is like, okay, is it Murphy or is it Giamatti? Who's it gonna be? I think it would be very funny if Bradley Cooper won either the SAG or the BAFTA. And I just think that'd be hilarious because then it is truly a three-horse race and everyone would be crying on Twitter. Like I said, I prefer Murphy and Giamatti over Cooper, but I'm not a Maestro hater. So I think that would just make it more interesting on Oscar night.
That'd be wild.
A three-horse race. Yeah. I think that'd be fun.
I think that would be truly phenomenal. I haven't even thought of that, and I'm the Maestro head on the pod where I'm just like, this movie is great.
There you go.
Ben hasn't seen Maestro yet, and I'm just so psyched that it got nominated, which means we're going to cover it here in a couple of weeks because I feel like I quote it pretty much every week here on the show. So it's coming eventually. We got about an hour left where I can toss in a quote here or there. There was a thing going around Twitter today, actually, day of recording, where the people were asking like, what is like your hot take for the Oscars? What would you have wanted, or what would you have wanted to see? And I put out there Cooper for director would have been cool to see a nomination. I think that would have been really, really interesting. I initially had him predicted to get in, and then at the last moment I swerved because I lost faith in myself and my boy and people with brains. And it panned out pretty good because he did not get nominated. On a more realistic note, and tying it back to Anatomy of a Fall, I truly believe, especially on a rewatch, that Anatomy of a Fall has a very good possibility to take home original screenplay. Justine Triet won for that, gave a great speech, and it just feels like the competition that it is up against. It's nominated against The Holdovers, Maestro, May, December, and Past Lives. All quite great films. It just doesn't feel like any one of those four contenders sticks out like Anatomy of a Fall does when it comes to a screenplay and the depth that it carries and what it means to the film itself. Anatomy of a Fall, of course, nominated for Best Picture, nominated for Best Director, Justine Triet. We're going to get into that in a second because, of course, we have to talk about that. Best Actress for Sandra Hüller, Best Original Screenplay, like I mentioned, and Best Film Editing. Can we break down the Best Director thing for a second? Because this is still reverberating through Twitter, through everywhere that you look. Of course, Justine Triet getting in over Greta Gerwig. The big snub, switch up, disappointment, whatever you want to call it. Jonathan, how do you feel about Justine getting in and Greta not getting in?
So I love Justine Triet getting in. Anatomy of a Fall is one of my favorite movies of the year. I think there can be some nuance with Barbie takes on both sides, because I know some people are like, oh no, Barbie's trash. Why would it get? That's not a snub. It's trash. Like, don't even nominate it. And then other people are like, everyone else is not as deserving as Greta Gerwig for whatever reason. I don't know how you two feel, but I love Barbie. I loved it. It was like the most fun time I had at a theater. And I think in the hands of another director, Barbie is like just not even mentioned. It's like not even in the culture, I think. So would I have liked to see Greta Gerwig get in? Like, for sure. But it's always that question of like, okay, then who would you take out?
Yeah.
And then it just turns into which movie do you like more? So then that argument just doesn't even hold weight anyways, because we all have different opinions on different movies. I know some people hate The Zone of Interest, and I know some people that is their favorite movie of the year, one of their favorites of the decade. So I think this director lineup is honestly fantastic. If Gerwig was in it instead of Triet, I would still say the same thing, where I would say I think this director lineup is fantastic. So bottom line, I guess, is no real complaints.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting take that people have had of just like, she's in over Greta, because I think that just reinforces like there's only one female spot.
Yeah, it's an insane take. It's an absolutely insane take that we're like we're only pitting the two women against each other. Sorry to kill your train of thought, but like it's unbelievable to me.
No, I mean, yeah, it's kind of nuts. It's like, maybe Jonathan Glazer took Greta's spot. Maybe she's supposed to be in there with Justine because, only two of these movies made $1 billion, so not, again, like I know I said that before, it's not like a measurement of a good movie or success or anything, but like, I agree, with what Jonathan said. Like, I think another director makes a different Barbie movie. Like, Greta made this what it is. But, again, like I haven't seen Zone of Interest yet, but the rest of these are all fantastic films. Like, I don't know that I would swap Barbie out with Zone of Interest. Like, it got the recognition it needed by winning Best Picture, and a lot of the other things that it's nominated for, she wasn't like owed that nomination. Is it weird that the quote unquote most successful movie of the year isn't there for Best Director? Sure. But like you said, who do you take out? I have no idea who you take out.
But like, are we not as a culture, or like the people that are on this argument of like Greta should have been in over Triet, like, are we not mistaking Best Director for Best Picture? Like, Barbie got in for Best Picture. It's one of the 10 best pictures of 2023. Like, that is a full-blown recognition of not only Barbie as a whole project, but Greta and Margot as producers, as Warner Brothers for putting the movie together, as the team who is in the film. Like, that's what Best Picture means. I understand what Best Director implies, and I do agree with both of you. Like, if you take Greta away, you get a completely different Barbie. You get a completely different project. That is not the case. If you take Glazer away from Zone of Interest, if you take Yorgos away from Poor Things, you get different movies. That's what it fucking means. Like, that's the point. So I guess I don't understand like the whole context of people like thinking that like, how does a movie get in Best Picture and the director doesn't get in? Well, there's only 5 spots. That's how the Academy Awards works. Like, that's what we do here in this very made up awards show. I don't know who you take out to replace Greta. And I think that in itself proves maybe Greta's 6. Like, I know that's a hot take and I know people are going to disagree with that, but like, if we can't sit here and justifiably be like, listen, here's who Greta should have been in over, that proves our point of like, I don't think maybe Greta was like right there. Maybe it's a hair's length away, but I just don't think we're in that 5 zone. Yeah. I'm very, very happy to see Justine Triet get in for Anatomy of a Fall. I think that was like one of the best surprises of nomination morning. The fact that, of course, the DGA, generally opts to nominate only one woman. I think there are a lot of problems with that, and inherently, worth the discussion that does take place about these things. But I think the way that Anatomy of a Fall is directed, this movie completely falls apart without Triet's like ability to do what she does behind the camera, to switch from these very still lingering shots to like kind of these like paparazzi shots that we get throughout, and like this vibe of the movie. So I think that's tough. I love that Triet got in. Is she gonna win? No, I mean, like, right? Like, this is Nolan's directing award, or we're all on that page, right?
Yeah, this is Nolan's in a walk.
It's tough. That's a bummer. And I think to everybody's point, and like to everybody who cares about this stuff, to know that like we have the slate of directors that we do, we have the slate of best pictures that we do. This year is absolutely among one of the best that we've gotten in quite some time with all of these things.
For sure.
Jonathan, do you think that Anatomy of a Fall walks away with any Academy Award on March 10th?
That is tough. As of now, I agree with you. I do have it winning original screenplay. I think it'll take BAFTA and WGA. I don't think matters necessarily, because I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure the award show announces their winners after the Oscars. So that's kind of a moot point. But I do think it'll win original screenplay. I don't know why, but The Holdovers is tempting to me because it is very witty, it's funny, and that can tend to do well with certain screenplay categories. But when someone said this, like, I know voters do not think this way, but sometimes a trend is a trend. And like winning a screenplay award when you're not the director, if it's not a writer-director, because The Holdovers, the person nominated is like David Hemmingson. It's not Alexander Payne. Whereas Anatomy of a Fall, it's like Justine Triet and the other person. I'm so sorry. But Justine Triet is nominated for a screenplay, so she would get that award. So, and, I'm a Past Lives fan, but I just, tough beat.
Yeah.
Nominations, that's the win right there. Don't think they're in for it. So I do think Anatomy of a Fall will take screenplay as of now.
Yes. Start the movement. Keep the energy going. I love that. Ben, Anatomy of a Fall, taking home any Academy Awards.
I mean, I'm with Jonathan on this. Like, I think it's screenplay. People know Past Lives is my favorite movie of last year. I would love to see that win. But after watching this movie, it's just like, God damn, this is written so well. Like, there's just so many layers to this script, into this movie. And after watching Holdovers and all that kind of stuff, I think Anatomy of a Fall takes it for original screenplay for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. We've formed a trifecta of confidence
here. Coalition
and
here for
I feel really good about that. I feel good about my take about that too. I can kind of back it up a little bit. Last question about original screenplay, since we're talking about this. Is Maestro like?
No.
Is that supposed to be here?
It's not.
Is that okay? Well, Ben, you haven't seen the movie, so
I was saying no to the question in general. It's just like when you started with Maestro, I was like, no. We'll have an episode on this in like 3 weeks.
Is like, how did we get in for that? Like, I guess I just don't. I didn't deem that screenplay. Like, I watched that movie and I was like, wow. Director, editing, score. Like, I can see elements. I can see these things. Best picture, of course, but like, where did the screenplay nom come from? And I guess, what do we replace it with if we think it's wrong?
Well, yeah, I totally agree. Even Maestro lovers, I think, would admit screenplay is probably not its strongest aspect, which you just admitted right there.
Yeah.
I don't know if Maestro's 4 or 5. You can argue if it was 4 just because of how it was performing overall this season, where it really didn't miss a beat, especially in the screenplay category, which is a little surprising. But for the sake of the question, they really have to thank the Academy. Maestro and May December have to thank the Academy for moving Barbie into adapted.
Yeah,
whereas
big time.
Everywhere else, Barbie is competing in original, which is a guaranteed slot lock for that movie. And once it moves to adapted, theoretically, 2 slots opened up. And then if there was more stricter competition, then maybe Maestro still misses. But when Maestro is competing with is May December, which doesn't seem to be like that much? Is it Saltburn, which also doesn't seem to be like that much? Is it Air, which people forget exists sometimes? It just kind of glides in, and happy for it. Congrats, I guess. But I think they have to thank the Academy on that one.
I mean, shout out Netflix for just like figuring out how to kind of weasel their way into a lot of categories this year.
Oh, don't get me started on man. Don't get me started on
kind
Netflix,
of unreal. Like, I mean, I always personally find the Netflix conversation exceptionally interesting. Of course, dating back to like Roma and like that being as close to the sun as they got, and they couldn't quite bring it home. To their no fault of their own, I'm sure. The Academy has their history, but they come close with Power of the Dog. They get double digit noms with The Irishman and all of these things, and it just seems like their window has kind of passed. Yet they're still kind of finagling things in for Best Leading Actress for Naiad and like these types of things. So I think Jonathan, correct response there.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting, fascinating thing. Okay, so we all agree Anatomy of Fall is going to take on one Academy Award at the end of the night. We're going for original screenplay. I feel pretty good about that. I think it does not have a shot at Best Picture. I don't think really anything has a shot outside of Oppenheimer. Jonathan, do you disagree with that?
No, okay. I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah. It's like, who is number 2? You can tell me 3 different movies, and I'll just be like, yeah, maybe, probably. Maybe. Sure. I agree with you, and that's the point.
That's a good question, though. Who, like, if we had to choose, who's the number 2? Is it Killers? Is it Anatomy of a Fall? I don't know. Which speaks to the power that Oppenheimer is bulldozing into the race with. Let's just say that.
No, Oppenheimer is Michael Jordan right now. Honestly, number 2. Geez, I mean, I haven't put too much thought into it, but just based off nominations, and you have to think of a package theoretically, because you can't, like, no movie, at least not yet, has taken on like just Best Picture really, and like that's it. You have to think of a package. So in that sense, I do kind of think there is something with the holdovers, because I think there's a world where it takes supporting actress, best actor, original screenplay, and then that's a hell of a package.
That would be
It got
insane.
an editing. It got an editing nomination. It makes people feel good. It plays to the right sort of crowd. And with all that being said, I still think Oppenheimer in a walk. So it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But maybe I'd say Holdovers is number 2.
Yeah, the gap between 1 and 2 is huge. It's
huge.
Like, it sort of feels like Grand Canyon. You know what I mean? Like there's just there's no point. But I mean, I could see as far as nominations go, like Barbie could be in the discussion possibly, but I might give the edge to Killers just with the Scorsese of it all. And Lily Gladstone kind of winning everything. I think I might put that at number 2. But again, this year feels like it's Oppenheimer's to lose on a lot of stuff.
An exceptionally bad beat for Killers of the Flower Moon this year that gets double-digit noms, sees it miss adapted screenplay, make up for that in Best Original Song, and still just be a landslide away from being remotely number 2 in kind of anything. I think that's, of course, an interesting conversation. And we've talked about Killers of the Flower Moon on this show, and we're going to have a final predictions pod like 3 days before the Academy Awards. So we're going to hash all this out then. But I think you're right, Jonathan. It just feels like the Holdovers would be a number 2. And I guess the reason I brought up Killers of the Flower Moon is because like it's missing that package. What does it walk away with other than Best Actress? Nothing. It would have been adapted, and then it just missed. So I'm really intrigued by that, and I think we've got another Scorsese like late stage masterpiece that is just going unrecognized, which is insane. That's the world that we live in, where people are like, yeah, the Holdovers is better. So you know what? That's okay. That's the Academy. That's what makes this fun. That's what makes this awards race completely ridiculous and consumes our lives and our brains for so long, just for us to be mad and disappointed. Okay, let's talk about Anatomy of a Fall. Jonathan, I'll start with you. Let's go big broad strokes first. You mentioned you liked the film. Tell me how much you liked it, maybe what about it you liked, and then we'll start asking questions and get into the true cinema and walk through the movie.
Sure. So I saw this at TIFF. Luckily, Justine Triet was there. So she introduced it. It was awesome. And I was in the balcony, which is not that bad, but it's kind of steep. So it's really steep down. So I'm really looking, and the seats eventually get a little uncomfortable. First world problems, I know. I'm not trying to complain. I'm just trying to say your movie going experience influences how you feel about a movie. It's
Absolutely.
crucial. So I was like, okay, like the viewing angle ain't great. Seat's a little uncomfortable. This movie's like 2.5 hours long or something. And I was locked in, like absolutely fully in. Full disclosure, courtroom dramas, like crime thrillers, totally up my lane.
Nice.
Totally up my lane. There
Let's
are
go.
bad courtroom dramas that I'll watch and I'll just be like, yo, that was pretty good. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Because even the little mundane things that some people might find just kind of filler or not that exciting, I'm locked in.
Yeah.
So with Anatomy of a Fall, when it's a great courtroom drama, a great crime thriller, ends on I guess we'll talk about the ending, I'm sure, a little bit, but I was totally locked in, loved it. And then I rewatched it again when it actually came to theaters and just further cemented it. I think this movie's great. It was in my top 10. Yeah, loved it.
What about you, Ben? The moment of truth I've been waiting for months.
Well, first I want to know, Jonathan, do you have a favorite courtroom drama? I'm very curious. And I'm putting you on the spot here. But
No,
I'm just
yeah.
curious.
Gosh.
Give me your top 10 courtroom dramas
Top
of all
10
time
now,
right now.
alphabetical.
My mind immediately went to A Few Good Men,
Yeah.
which is a very basic answer, but like it's basic for a reason.
Yeah.
You cannot beat that last scene. So
No, it's so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the house, like with the bat, just walking around, like coming up with that
Unreal.
movie's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it. It's a great pick. Anatomy of a Fall, my review.
I'm so scared right now.
Had I seen this a month ago, this would have ended up in my top 10 of the year.
Yes.
For sure.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yes. We
This
did it.
was so good. This was like, it felt instantly after watching, I was like, oh, that's like a 5-star movie. That's fucking crazy. Like that was, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting a solid 4. You know what I mean? Like this is getting a lot of nominations. It's winning awards. This is just going to be a great, almost procedural, like, courtroom drama. Let's get into it. And then everything about it is just perfect. Like I don't know what to nitpick about this. If anything, the son, he's so good.
Oh my
and
God.
the scene that he gives, these are all spoilers and stuff like that, but such a powerful scene. It's just beautiful performance, but beautiful performance all the way around. Like with the dog, like when he's interacting with the dog, both when it's breathing and not, he just does a wonderful job with that. But Sandra Hüller is fucking just lights out. She's so good in this. Like she just gives such a beautiful performance here. And I don't know, we just get so much emotion here. There's so much layer here. I'm sure, Jonathan, you've seen a lot more courtroom dramas than I have, but this one was so interesting to see like their procedure and how it all works. It's like, oh, you can just like question the defendant in the middle of like questioning a witness. Like that's fucking like, it makes sense. Obviously, you just turn to be like, is that true? Like I get it, but it's like, oh, it's crazy that you can just like do that, and it's like, who is the jury here? Are these like just 5 judges up there, or like who are we like addressing? So that was really cool to learn that as the movie went on. The way it picks up, just like in this interview, it's like, okay, you're kind of catching on to what's happening, and then fucking steel drums just kick in. Like, holy shit, this is so distracting. How are these people still talking to each other? Like, this is insane. And then for that to be the impetus possibly to her like murdering her husband, is just like, oh, okay, like, yeah, this is a thing, I guess, that they have going on here. But I mean, people have heard me talk about it a lot. I do film editing like for a living. That's what I do. And the editing in this movie is just fucking amazing. It's so good. Like the way they cut this story, from, hearing the recording in the courtroom to like us going to the actual scene and like watching all that happen, and the cuts that they make and that they don't make, like when we just hold on the characters. I loved this. I thought it was awesome. It was just like an instant, like, oh, this is like a 5-star movie. I wish I had seen it earlier, but I'm glad to have seen it now. I'm excited to go through the whole thing.
I always feel so relieved when you haven't seen a movie and I've been like hyping it up to you for so long, and then you're like, you know what? It was actually good. I feel like I feel like I've won, which is great.
Yeah.
I saw this at New York Film Festival back in September. And I liked it quite a lot. I think that I didn't like it as much as I thought I would back then, because that was like pretty fresh off it winning Palme d'Or at Cannes, and all of this hype of like, holy shit, this is incredible. What a movie. So I went into it with pretty high expectations, and I think it was the type of movie that I find really appealing because it is so dense and there's so many questions, and it didn't go the way that I anticipated at all. And I think that is the specialty of the film. So I walked away thinking it was quite good, and I knew I wanted to rewatch it immediately. Of course, rewatch it in preparation for this. And Ben, much like you, I finished the film and I was like, is that a 5-star movie? I think we're very close. And I don't know what the nitpick is, and I don't know what I would change about it, but I think watching it, which is so counterintuitive, but like watching it in my home alone, glued in to the TV, was the better situation for me, versus like trying to gauge like what the people around me are thinking, or like what's going on with this guy opening M&Ms like 6 rows down. Like, I was just locked in at home. It's so tight. It's so smart. It is so quick, and it is so shocking. Like, even on the second time, where Sandra Hüller, like you mentioned, completely lights out with everything that she does, and her little nuances of switching from French to English, or, asking like, hey, can I speak in English? Can I say this? I don't know what this word is. Like, her little things where basically it's almost a 2.5 hour microscopic character study of like, what's the slip up that she's going to commit, I think is incredible. So I love this movie. It was in my top 10 of 2023. I think upon a rewatch, I would have ranked it substantially higher, actually. So there's something special going on about this movie. Let me put this out to you guys. Do we want to do true cinema and walk through this film, or should we start by asking these big questions that Anatomy of a Fall asks? Do we want to get into the big meat of the movie?
I'll defer to our guests. I'm up for whatever.
Let's not bury the lead. Let's just go with the big boy questions.
Okay.
Let's just get into it.
All right. Okay. So, of course, the question at the core of this film is did she do it? And I want to start with that question. I have a couple follow-ups about things that transpire that I want to get your guys' takes on. Sandra, of course, blamed for the murder of her husband is the point of this movie. Jonathan, I want to know from you, did she do it?
Okay, I knew this question was coming, and I've been thinking about it, and now that it's here, I'm still thinking about it.
Still not ready.
Well, I will say one, and maybe you two feel differently, but I know I've seen on Twitter, some people feel very sure that this is a definitive answer to the movie, of that, we're getting to spoilers, that she didn't do it. Some people are like, I don't even understand what people are saying. I totally disagree. I think it is ambiguous, like on purpose. Her performance, and even just the way she lies down with that dog at the end, just something about it. And I've thought about it, and I don't know. I kind of think she did. I kind of think she did, because I'm thinking about the prosecution, the lawyer, who is amazing also. He is amazing.
Yeah.
Sandra's lawyer you're talking about?
Well, he's great too, but the other lawyer in the red.
Oh, you're talking about the general in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking back on everything, and 'cause my dad was a lawyer, actually. My dad was a lawyer, and he became a judge. So I was like, I'm like trying to watch it, almost like pretending to like look through my dad's eyes or something. Yeah. And honestly, that lawyer was just making a lot of sense. Like sometimes it just makes some sense. But I can be convinced by you like right now. Like if you give me some arguments, I'm be like, all right, she didn't do it. Totally. Yeah. But that's what I think is great about the movie, is at least in my eyes, it doesn't give a definitive answer. and you kind of have to think for yourself. I mean, Neon is doing some campaign where it's like, did she do it.com or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you get a vote. So I guess I would say yes, just because I want to be a little chaos agent.
Nice.
But you can convince me.
I mean, shout out to Neon real quick for like marketing the hell out of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, I have a postcard from when I saw it that said like, did she do it? And it's just a picture of the crime scene, which I think is truly sublime. They got 5 nominations out of this movie. They won the Palme d'Or for like the 4th year in a row, I think it is, for Neon. So like pretty insane stuff.
Jeez. Yeah, you're right.
Ben, did she do it?
I don't think she did.
Oh, wow.
I think he's a klutz and he fell out the window.
Really?
Damn,
Yeah.
victim blaming.
Yeah,
That was harsh.
That's what I'm putting on here. I don't know that he attempted suicide. That feels like there's a lot of different ways you could do that. Having said that, like just less than 3 weeks ago, someone in the apartment buildings next to my office committed suicide by jumping off. So like, I guess there is people that do that, but
oh my God,
I think going off of like 12 stories is different than like 3. You know what I mean? I was just like, it seems like such an interesting way to do it. Let's aim for the woodshed. I just think he's a klutz, and he fell out. So that's my opinion. I think that window just kind of closed on him, and there he went.
So he's a stifled genius in my eyes, and this is kind of the kind of the core of his character, of what is his problem and why he might have committed suicide. Of course, is that he felt held down by Sandra and the life that he has lived and things that he has to do instead of right, essentially. But you think he's a klutz.
Yep.
Wow, that's a take.
Yeah,
I haven't heard that take before, and I'm pretty shocked by it.
I got to bring something new.
At no point in my analyzing of this film was I like, you know what? Maybe he slipped.
There's
literally
a lot of
never
low
fucking thought of
beams
that.
in that like attic area, like really easy just like knock your head on something and fall out. Like I don't know.
I mean,
we don't know how handy
right
he
now.
was. We don't know. You know what I mean? Like
Can't
he's
rule
worked
it
on this
out.
project
Can't rule it
forever.
out.
So I'm a klutz. I'm not saying anything bad. It's just like some people have it, some people don't.
Wow. That's kind of appealing to me a little bit because I don't think you're necessarily wrong. Of course, we didn't know anything about his status of being a handyman and like his house renovation project that he's been working on for quite some time. I think she did it. And I think that, of course, the movie is purposefully exceptionally ambiguous in leading us one way or another. But if you think of it logically, you'll arrive at no definitive answer because I've tried to think about this from the information that is offered to us, right? The song is playing exceptionally loud. You wouldn't hear him either struggle or get hit or fall out of the window. That's the point. Sandra claims that she went up for a nap and napped below him. So she was in the vicinity. Again, so strike against Sandra here. Strike against our boy for having the loud music. It just feels, like you mentioned, Jonathan, something is eerie about that final frame that we get with her sitting with Snoop. And I don't know if that is because she was acquitted, because she knows she did it, or if that's because she knows that she potentially positively influenced Daniel to acquit her, essentially, and to testify to a truth that she helped him decide. We could spend probably 90 minutes just dissecting did she do it or not, which I think is the genius of this movie. I'm on record saying she did it. Ben, you don't think she did it. Jonathan, you're kind of undecided, but you think she did it.
Yeah, I don't like that she's a liar. She lied too many times to the police. Like, I know for me, if I am ever accused of something like that, you will not catch me lying. Absolutely not. I'm spilling everything because I know I'm innocent. So when she's lying about how she got hit with the bruise and like she is right down there and it's like she didn't she just forgot to mention that they had an argument.
You don't
like,
think she's
before it
just
happened?
you don't think she's just nervous?
Bruh,
Because think about Daniel's thing here. His memory is altered, right?
Yeah.
Her being a much more mature adult that can choose selectively maybe what to remember or not. That's a little wisdom in there of like which direction she wants to go. And maybe she does hit her arm on the counter so many times, she just didn't think that it might have happened from the argument. It could have happened. It could have been a recurring thing.
Could
Okay,
be.
Here's my question for you guys. How logistically did she do it?
Mm-hmm. Great
if
question.
he's 1.8 meters tall
No
and the
fucking
railing
clue.
is 1.2 meters tall, like
No idea.
it's over half of this hall's him. We got no murder weapon anywhere. Like I'm curious.
Are you sure we don't have a murder weapon though?
That's what I was- Well, they
Easily
didn't
to
find
dispose
it.
of. Talk about the general. He's like, murder weapons. You can just dispose of those. Like that idea was so quickly just pushed to the side that I thought that was incredible writing.
I think that's just what you say when you didn't find a murder weapon. It's like, oh, you can totally get rid of those, but like, can you? Can you easily get rid of murder weapons? Like, is that a thing we as a society know? Like, oh yeah, you can kill somebody and then just like get rid of it. But I think the person even said it was probably like metal. Like like it's not like she threw it in the fire. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't find it, then fuck, that's on them since she got away with it. So good job. You know, like if they didn't find it.
So you're saying
That's
she
what I don't
might
know
have
is
done
how,
it, is what I'm hearing. You're changing your answer.
but
might have done
that's the cop's fault. Yeah. But I just don't know how she would have done it, honestly. Like I'm curious about that. But again, we could go on this for 90 minutes.
That's a great question. No,
I don't know.
I mean, maybe she's super strong. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe
Yeah,
it's just
maybe
as
she
simple as
lifts.
that.
She's
Yeah.
bulking. She's like, getting her protein on, and she just lifts.
I mean, it's tough, right? And I think that is, of course, the genius of the film is that we can't decide, and we've been thinking about this and postulating on this for a long time, many months for Jonathan and I, and like I still don't know if she did it or not. Another question: I think this is a natural second question because this kind of occupies most of the final act, where we dive into understanding Samuel and his potentially attempted suicide. Do you think he actually attempted suicide? Because I don't know if he did. I don't
You're
know if
talking
I'm
about the pills.
talking about the pills. I don't know if he actually did. And here's why. Not just because of the dog experiment, which I think is a whole thing in and of itself, but because directly after his psychoanalyst is kind of questioned and deposed, Sandra's lawyer gets back basically to like the stand. Vincent goes right next to her, and we see her say, and we can hear her say, "That wasn't Samuel. He wasn't like that." Something to that effect.
Yeah.
I don't think she thinks that he committed suicide, even though she's the one that brings it up, because she brings it up so late in the game after meeting with Vincent. She does it when she's smoking / drinking / like impaired on some level because she's going through all of this already with Vincent. It just seems really sus that he would actually try to commit suicide.
I mean, I don't disagree with that, but how many people commit suicide and you're like, I totally saw that coming. Like I knew that was going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, like it's just, I'm not like, it's like a funny comment or whatever, but really it's just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that many people that have done it, but I've never known anyone who's like, yeah, I could totally tell that was like what was going to happen here. So,
but he'd been unhappy for quite some time.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't she have seen that as a possible potential outcome?
Yeah, I mean, possibly, for sure.
Yeah, it just seemed, I don't know. That's one part where I just never really bought that he tried to commit suicide. And that you're totally right, Ben. Like the people who do, a lot of times are like, wow, like I never I never would have saw that coming. Like it's always like they say, like the battle's inside that you keep.
Yeah.
So that is, and once again, I feel like we're gonna just go in circles with these questions, which once again goes to the movie. But I don't know, this part and like the whole dog pill experiment car story.
Okay, this is my next question.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Do you think the dog story that Daniel spoke of under oath to a judge was fabricated? Do you think that conversation with his father really happened?
I mean, I see the conversation happening and I see him recontextualizing it later. I think a parent could prep a kid just like, listen, like dogs don't live forever. You do have to prep yourself for that. You know, when he's going to go, he's going to go. I see all that. And then I could see him later on as being like, oh, maybe he was talking about himself, or I can use this, you know, like, I don't know. I think the conversation happened. I don't know if he recognized then that the dad was talking about himself or if he actually was or not, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of where I end up with, because the first time I watched this, it didn't even occur to me that story could be fabricated. I
Same
totally
here.
bought it. And that goes to the kid, Milo Machado Greener. Hell of a performance. Oh, so my good. God. Oh my God. But it didn't even occur to me. And then the second time I was like, there's some line that woman who has to kind of watch him says, where I felt like, I'm forgetting the line right now, but I felt like it almost like gave him permission to kind of go with it and like save his mom. And I think I agree with you, Ben, where I'm sure that conversation did happen. That seems like a totally normal conversation for a parent to have with their kid to prepare that their dog might not be alive and it's not going to last forever. And maybe he just took it and ran with it.
So the moment that you speak of with Marge is where she basically is this incredible emotional high for Daniel, where he is completely breaking down and basically pleading and begging to Marge, tell me what to believe. Tell me what is right. Tell me what happened. I have to understand. And Marge encourages him essentially like, you reach a point where you have to decide your truth. Yeah. You get to decide what that truth is. I agree with you guys. I think the first time that I saw this movie, not even a question. I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's cool that conversation happened and like he could recall that and like, yeah, it really was about his dad and all those things. Second time I watch it, that nuance of like choosing his truth and deciding and potentially recontextualizing this very authentic conversation about Snoop that probably had nothing to do with Samuel himself, actually just about a dog, is something that could have happened because Daniel at the very end, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb to such a nuanced script when Daniel says he was talking about him. He was talking about himself. That's much too like spotlight, like here's what you're looking for with this whole project. And I think that is why I question this, is because that's him choosing his truth and maybe speaking out loud and deciding his truth to say, yes, it was about him. This is where I stand on the truth. And this is where I'm going to say in front of the court, in front of the judge, in front of my mom that, look, I do side with you. And I think he was talking about himself. He has to believe that himself. And the reason that he says those words is to get to that point. So I think the conversation is not necessarily completely imaginative, but definitely recontextualized into what the trial has led him to believe about his father. Those are the three big questions that I had. Let's start digging into the movie because we're going to have to kind of move swiftly here through some of the big parts because there's a lot to break down about this movie that we've been doing. I'll start with the introduction, the interview between Sandra and Zoe. Great introduction. Of course, this is when 50 Cent's BIMP, the instrumental version, breaks in. To me, it felt like Sandra was flirting with Zoe. That's where I stand on that. Huge question mark in the court case, of course. Where does Sandra stand on that? She's known to have, known to be bisexual. She's known to have kind of extramarital sexual affairs and sexual happenings that she is committed to. She has said. and she is intellectually stimulated, and someone was taking an intellectual interest in what she does. So I think she was flirting. Thoughts on the flirting? Thoughts on the introduction?
I did not clock any flirting, but that could speak more to my just being obtuse and not like being able to really pick up on that kind of shit. Like it wasn't until he brought it up in court, I was like, oh, wait, were they flirting? Right. You know, like maybe that's what it was. But yeah, I don't know. It was a great introduction though. It was such a drastic change from the rest of the movie that we didn't know was gonna, happen that way. So I loved it.
Yeah, great way to start the movie. At first, I did not think she was flirting until it felt like she wanted to wrap up the interview. And then, first time watch, when she started to, it seemed like she wanted to kind of shut the interview down a little bit. That's where I maybe got some hints that, is this something more? And then once it was brought up in court and then rewatching it, I think she knew what she was doing from the start.
She does suggest to Zoe, like, hey, let's wrap it up here because we can't do it. I'll come to you in the other town. Like, we'll meet at a later date, and it'll be away from this house and away from my husband and kid, and we'll meet somewhere where we can have this interview. That just, like, shouts, like, hey, I'd love to meet you privately and, like, carry on a relationship with you, or at least something for the evening or afternoon, whatever it may be.
I'm trying to get some.
It's personal hygiene at that point for Sandra. She's got to take care of business. I get it. Second on the list here, which, by the way, I thought it was an incredible, like you mentioned, Ben, a complete tonal misdirection for where the rest of the film is headed based on this opening scene. Second on the list here is when Vincent is drawing the art. Of course, we get the crime scene. We get Samuel, being found by Daniel and kind of the shock of all this and getting into the murder. Vincent comes and starts to question Sandra of, what do we think happened? You need to kind of walk me around the house. Tell me where things are. Tell me about your life, these types of things. I wanted to call out him drawing this little sketch of where it happened and how it might have happened and how he might have hit his head and these types of things. Not only because I think it's a really interesting scene and really well done and a smart maneuver to like kind of contextualize the whole picture for us of like, okay, this is a good possibility of what might have happened. But because Vincent draws people out of arrows, and I think that's incredible. I've never done that. I've never seen anybody do that. He does an arrow and then he puts legs and feet on it, and it's a person all of a sudden. And I was blown away by every time that he does it. I was just like, wow, this guy's an artist. Very cool.
Yeah,
5 stars.
5 stars. That's what it is.
5 stars indeed. I thought it was cool as well. I was like, oh, it's an arrow. Oh no, it's a person again.
Yeah,
like, It's like every time he did it, I was thrown off. But great scene. I think a lot of him correcting her. It's like, don't talk about yourself. Like keep the story on him. Like that's what we want to focus on here. It was so well done. I loved it.
It's great writing because you know exactly who that character is in just the first few times that he speaks without them just explicitly telling you. You just know that, okay, he's got it. Like he knows what he's doing. He knows the right questions to ask. And he doesn't even like ask her permission, kind of. Well, I guess later he finds some things that he maybe should have asked. But regardless, you understand that like, okay, this is like a competent guy.
Yeah.
Is he though? This is my question. Because at the end, they're out for drinks and he goes, we've never won a case before. I didn't know we were going to win this one. Do you think that was true? Or do you think that was just like kind of his hubris of like, hey, we did it. And like, maybe I should make her feel better that she caught a W.
That's how I took it. I took it more as just like, oh yeah, we've never won anything. Like just kind of joking around.
Interesting.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were being honest.
I
same.
don't know, dude. Oh, okay. You think it was like a hubris thing and you think that he's actually a pretty good lawyer.
Yeah. Cause I'll fix the blur. I don't know. I just think in myself, if I put myself in that situation, I'm totally making a joke. Yeah. That's how I read it. I was like, he's just exaggerating. Okay. Like he's like, oh yeah, wow, we've never won before. That was crazy. Like that's totally how I would lighten the mood after an immense stressful period.
Oh, that's interesting. I dissect that much deeper to my own insanity. So I guess that's why I like this movie so much. I think Vincent's character is exceptionally fleshed out, and which is interesting because like We don't know a lot about him. We don't know his backstory. We don't know where he comes from. We don't really know in detail his connection to Sandra. He was in love with her at one point? Am I reading like between the lines correctly? He mentions that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think he explicitly says so, yeah.
Okay. That's fascinating to me. Like a completely different wrinkle to this situation that Sandra finds herself in. Next on the list, I have the music test with the investigators and Daniel realizing he touched the wrong tape. Man, gut turning stuff when Daniel's like, I got it wrong. I touched the wrong tape, which is an incredible, like, quote unquote twist to the film that you're just like, oh shoot, I don't know if anybody knows what happened. Like, I don't think anybody can correctly recall that day or that where they were or the volume of their conversations or anything like that. This is kind of the key moment as well, where we get this incredible direction moving from, of course, like a still camera to like a, not necessarily a body cam, but like a handheld camcorder from a police officer, and to make things feel definitely more uneasy, definitely more like invasive and at home. And I think this scene opens everything up for the rest of the film.
For sure. And, you know, without so much calling him a liar, they're just like, oh, so you're unreliable then. You don't know what's going on. So it's like, they'll do anything they can just to, make him come across as an unreliable witness, which, I mean, most witnesses are, you know, just like in general, it's like for the most part. But yeah, that was like a pretty gut wrenching scene. Just him standing there, just like with his hand on the side. It's like, oh shit, wrong tape. That sucks so bad. But such an interesting scene to see them like recreate it in the actual house and stuff, and not like, I don't know. I assumed they would do it somewhere else, but it's like, no, we're just going to go to the actual crime scene and recreate this fight, which I guess wasn't actually a fight supposedly, but
yeah. This is one of my favorite scenes of the movie, because I think in courtroom drama, or in this case, since we're not at the courtroom yet, in crime thrillers, it's just like a procedural, and some movies will just kind of go through in a linear fashion, straight line until you get it. This is a good like rock the boat moment. Like this is like the first time where truly as an audience member, I felt like I was in the palm of Justine Triet's hands. Yeah. Because you're watching it happen, it's like, okay, everything makes sense. They're gonna go through this. And then when he puts his hand on the tape and he's like, wait, this is wrong. After he felt so confident, that's the first time as an audience member you're like, okay, now I'm truly don't know which way this is gonna go. And that I think speaks to just an excellent scene in a great movie. So one of my favorites.
Yeah, that is the kind of the turning point where Triet does directly guide you and say, like, look, you're on this journey with me now, and everything's unreliable, and these are who these people are individually and with their relationship with one another, their relationship with the law, with the courts, with all of these things. We get the 1 year cut, 1 year later, which I always just like find truly incredible, like whatever the movie is, and it goes to show, like, which I think is an interesting wrinkle in this movie, because both Sandra and Daniel and Vincent have now have to live with this for a year. Like they've had to be doing this and going to bed thinking about this, and Daniel trying to discover the truth and understand like why things happen for a year. There's a quick little moment after Samuel dies where Daniel's in bed crying, and basically his godmother comes over and they try to feed him some food and these things. I just wanted to quickly call that out because I think it's an important line from Daniel. He says, no one Sandra says, no one understands. We can't understand. And then Daniel replies and says, I have to understand, which I think is the crux of the film. It's everything packaged together, saying that no one understands and we probably can't, but we feel the need to have to understand what is taking place and what the truth is really at the end of the movie. Then we get to the courtroom and we shift gears and tone to go directly into the French courtroom, which I'm curious, could you guys stand up in a French courtroom? If you were indicted for a murder of your partner, with that guy hounding your ass in the French court, could you do it?
I don't know how much choice I'd have, but it weirdly seems more formal and less formal at the same time than the U.S. court system. It kind of feels like it's, yeah, I'm gonna ask this person a question, I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna do that, whatever, and people are just kind of like standing around, and the way that people are facing each other, it's kind of the actual structure of the room is very interesting, but somehow it feels loose to me. Like it's just kind of like firing off questions versus like the US system where it's just like one person asks, one person respond, and that's it the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have to, but it made for some entertaining scenes to say the least.
I'm caving 100%.
Yeah. I'm cracking for sure.
Bro, even if I didn't do it, I'd just be like, yo, I did it. All right.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
You need to get off my ass, man. Yeah, that was like one of the weirdest things of like the French courtroom system. It was like very like sassy. Yeah. And like there's a whole like several minutes of them like reading a passage of the book, of her book, and like actually trying to use it against her. And they're like snapping back at each other. It's kind of like you said, where in the US system, it's like, okay, the defense goes up, they'll question, they'll say, okay, like that's it, no more questions, Your Honor. Then they sit back. Prosecution goes up, they'll question, they'll sit back down. Whereas this, it's like, I'm just in the middle, and then the two lawyers are like just back and forth, like a true debate almost, rather instead of a trial.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't speak to if that's how much of a movie magic that is compared to how it's actually done. But regardless, it makes for some good cinematic moments, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd crumble. I'd crack for sure. I'm on your team here, Jonathan. I couldn't handle the incessant hounding from our guy, who is really mean. Let's just be honest. Like, he's just a really mean guy. That's just like, I know he's doing his job and he's trying to get to the truth, but this guy's an asshole, and he's just taking every opportunity to take shots and send out strays left and right. And the robes are intimidating. The
red?
The red.
Come on.
Yeah.
Red is scary.
It's brutal. It's brutal stuff for sure. So I think the French courtrooms have it figured out in terms of like intimidation tactics from a courtroom standpoint. They've got that nailed pretty good. We get the montage with the indictment. The trial begins, kind of. And then we find out that Sandra has essentially been released under judicial supervision. This is where we get Marge to come in and be this intermediary, this liaison between Sandra and Daniel to ensure there's no funny business going on between these two key witnesses that are both giving testimonies. And this is the moment in the movie where things kind of switch to full-time French, and hey, you need to speak French around me, and you know, when we're in court we have to speak French, which is very smartly employed. And of course it is a French film, but like it's very critical in understanding like the communication style and the energy of the whole courtroom and what they're trying to get out of certain people. And of course Sandra like kind of backs out on that later in the game, which I think is fascinating. She turns to English, and there's this whole subtext between what she speaks at home and, you know, the husband wanting to speak German and her wanting to speak French, and like all of these moving parts. I love this montage, celebrity, paparazzi thing we get going on with Sandra that throws us into kind of the madness of the courtrooms. I think it's a really good way to go in that direction for the movie.
Yeah, for sure. Just making celebrity out of a regular person, which we've done as a society now for so long. Yeah, I thought everything was just like handled brilliantly. That conversation, the argument they have about what they speak at home, that was just one of the greatest scenes, I think, of the movie. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another turning point for me, because this is where not only is it with the French, where in real life and in this character, Sandra is German, forced to speak French, and then kind of changed to English because she can't. This is where I feel like the movie really closes in on Sandra as a character, because not only are they forcing her to speak French, which is not her native language, but that's where Daniel is kind of gives hints and then eventually just straight up asks, like, I don't want to be in the same like house.
Yeah.
And again, as an audience member, you're like, so what is really happening here? Because that's like that's her son. And the son, even if with all this craziness, would still, you would assume, still want to be at least in somewhat close proximity with his mother. And so when he wants to leave and then she's forced to speak in a language that isn't her native one, it just feels like everything is starting to close in. And then obviously the argument scene, like you mentioned, nuts.
This is where I feel, and as the movie progresses even more so, but this is where I feel like the title, Anatomy of a Fall, is just fucking brilliant. Of course, not only for what it means literally for Samuel and like the anatomy of this fall and dissecting everything, the anatomy of a fall when it comes to a marriage, when it comes to a mother-son relationship, when it comes to a woman's identity and her life that we're watching fall apart right before our eyes. This leads me to the question, even if Sandra did not commit the murder, even if she is properly acquitted and had to go through all of this innocent, is she still a monster on some level? Because Daniel doesn't want to be around her. Daniel asks to be separated at some point in time, leads me to believe even if she's not a murderer, she is definitely a monster. At home, in her personal life, whatever the case may be. Just saying.
I mean, monster or like selfish, I think she's just, I don't know. I mean, monster seems really aggressive, I guess, to say about her. I'm not saying it's wrong, but just, it seems like
I'm just trying to take the energy of the French courts here. I'm just trying to go full send.
I need your red robe on if you're going to be doing that.
I should have showed up in a red robe. I would have
loved it. I would have loved it. I think she's just like very concerned about herself, like obviously wants to be a decent mother, but through that whole argument, about him wanting to write more, it's like, I find the time to write, like, why don't you? It's just, I think she's just like concerned with herself.
Yeah, I'm not sure if monster would be the word I would go to, but maybe that is the right word, because I know in the public eye, if this in the U.S., like the trial like this actually existed, whoever was accused of murder, even if they get presumed not guilty, there's still going to be a huge section of the population where it's like, oh, no, like she did it.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not. There's no way. And even though Daniel did, quote unquote, choose to save his mother, at the end where she meets him in bed, there's still something there where it still feels like he, at least to me, it felt like he was still almost a little either uncomfortable or unsure or still nervous around her. So his perception of her is probably different. The public's perception of her, you have to assume, is different. And then, so maybe monster is the right word. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's verbatim, but they say something to the effect of, Daniel says something to the effect of like, I was nervous for you to come home. And I think Sandra reciprocates that and basically says like, oh, so was I, which is why she goes out. And that's a question in and of itself. But like, why was Daniel nervous for her to come home? If she's innocent and like they're a mother, son, like everything's totally fine, don't you want her coming home like right away and consoling and like figuring out how do we move on with our lives and like, let's do this together type situation, which I again, like wrinkles left and right to this movie. Next on the list, the confession practice. Ben, you kind of pulled this up where Vincent continually reminds her like, don't talk about you, don't shift the things to you, talk about Samuel, talk about your relationship, talk about these things. This is where we get the insight into Daniel's accident and how Sandra essentially resented Samuel for fucking her son up and causing this medical thing to happen to him. I love this because we get a very, very slow, very steady creeping zoom into Sandra. And that takes place over like a 4 or 5 minute monologue that is pretty damning of like how she feels and how we're going to be discovering more about the true honest feelings she carries for the people in her life.
Yeah, this is a beautiful scene. That, like you said, that slow push in on her is just so well done. Such a brilliant decision to not cut away or, get reaction shots or anything, like just focus with her. And the story was just, I mean, kind of breathtaking to hear how it all happened and how she has that resentment towards her husband and stuff like that. So that, I mean, I think to an extent you could understand where she's coming from, with some of the anger that she has, but would that lead you to carry that to kill somebody? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just another layer that gets peeled back. And it feels like every 20 or 30 minutes, just another huge piece of information is dropped. And Justine Triet, I mean, you just said it, choice to really let the camera stay with Sandra Hüller, especially when she's just on a heater, just giving that monologue.
Yeah.
Like, of course, you have to keep the camera on her. So and you just let it do the rest. And just another layer, another thing to keep us on our toes. It's too good.
This is where we move to the courtroom essentially full time after this scene. We get the recording of kind of what we started the film with. So we kind of get this connection point of where we're going with analyzing the elements and the things that have happened. The first part I want to start out with is the prop display. Get this immaculate house prop, which is gorgeous, which I'm sure a lot of time and effort went into making that prop. So shout out whoever did that. Well done. Very good stuff. The thing that I want to call out about this is not only the fact that we get a great visual representation of like what might have happened to Samuel and what could have happened, this very important dissection between improbable and impossible. And this is when not the judge, but the general, the guy that's, kind of questioning everything, continues to repeat like, oh, it's just improbable, right? Not impossible. And always leaves the door open on things that could have happened.
Yeah.
I feel for this lady that just wanted to get up there and just say like, hey, this is what we think. And he was like, but you're wrong, right? And like, I don't know if she was ready for that type of questioning. So I felt bad for her.
She was not ready. I don't know that a lot of us would be. Like you said, I think all three of us would cave under some of his questioning tactics for sure. So, but it was, I mean, great. Gave one of the funniest lines in the movie. I think she's like, yeah, I mean, it's not impossible that I wouldn't be president, but like,
yeah, that was so
come on,
funny.
like, yeah, it was really a powerful scene here.
Yeah, he's just a dick. Honestly, like he's just a dick. Like he already made his point, but he just keeps making her repeat it. So, like, I guess good lawyer, but yeah, God, you just want to punch him in the face sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the scene where it makes you feel like, okay, cool. He's got a very one track mind of where his mission lies to discredit anything outside of kind of his view of reality or what might have happened, because he continually brings up this idea of like, oh, well, that's just like what you think happened. That's just what you guys speculate happened. That's what your mind thinks happened. Like he constantly discredits everybody in what they are believing is the truth. Next on the list, the recording and the memory of the argument. This to me is the scene. This is my true cinema scene. I'll show my cards a little early here. This is the Academy Awards clip for Sandra Hüller.
Yeah.
This is the pivotal moment where we start to realize things aren't what they seemed. And the story starts to kind of open up to saying, damn, like, man, maybe she is a bad person. Like, maybe she really did hold Samuel down. Like, our guy was just wanted to write. And, like, he was getting his books ripped off and these things were happening. And I think it opens up and unlocks a lot of potential possibilities of the dynamics of their relationships. Of course, incredible monologues from both of them, just delivering back and forth to each other and getting into that conversation about mother tongue and the language that they speak in their home, their sexual interactions with each other and outside of each other. And then the very important directorial decision to cut away from a reenactment scene when the physical altercation transpires. So it's left up to us to decide
the best cut,
what it means and what actually happened. Just like we're a member of that court, which I think is sublime filmmaking, just at the peak.
Yeah, like I'm gonna defer to Jonathan. I have nothing smart to add to this. Like it's just the fucking best part of the movie. Like I don't know what to say about it. Every decision that's made here is genius, and yeah, it pays off so well.
Yeah, that's. Whenever you're watching a movie, I don't think it's like, I try not to be like, oh, that's that's acting nomination right there. I
Yeah.
try not to do that. I don't like that, but I'll fully admit when she's yelling at him, I was like, oh my God, if she is not nominated, something happened here.
Yeah.
Something happened here. I think she's incredible. And just knowing the fact that Daniel is like listening to all this because he insisted that he wanted to go to court that day. I mean, I don't even know. I can't even like come up with a scenario of if I was in that situation, if I was listening to my parents like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would just be so like heartbreaking and tough to listen to if you're him. But yeah, that cut where you just like the noises, it is like, to me, obviously I know this isn't true, but to me, that is where it was like, okay, that's getting an editing nomination as well.
Yeah.
That cut is one of the most like remembered. So great.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. Really, really smartly executed. And, it does continue to make you question, like, what was their physical relationship, quote unquote? Like, how did they do these arguments? Like, obviously Samuel punched walls. We know this, and we have evidence, proof of that. And supposedly he hit himself, according to Sandra. I don't know. Who knows? This is also the moment where I just really briefly want to mention, you guys talked about the book and how the general brings out the book and reads these passages, and we get maybe one of the best one-liners of 2023 in is Stephen King a serial killer? Because they're trying to use her books as evidence to tether to reality and say, like, she is following the path that she's written about how to murder somebody, essentially. And then we get a great altercation between Vincent and the general of taking time on the floor for like arguments, which is just like so quick back and forth. Like this editing style, this sound style is so well done. And look, Stephen King, not a serial killer. Sandra, maybe. I don't know. Who's to say? Do you think do you think her books were part of this? Like, is that a valid argument from the court?
I don't know if it's a valid argument, but we don't know that Stephen King isn't a serial killer.
I was just thinking that too. I was thinking that too.
He hasn't been caught, so maybe he's a great serial killer. We don't know.
If he ever went to French court, he'd be fucking caught. Let me tell you that right now.
I don't know. I just can't take that stuff seriously if that was like really happening. And I feel like in a US court, I feel like that'd be shut down so fast.
Yeah.
Just be like, what the hell are you reading? Like, no, you're not gonna, this is not evidence. This is not evidence. And I mean, if anything, it, I guess to take his side, it just further adds or emphasizes the fact that she may or may not have stolen his idea or a book or whatever. But even then, I feel like they already got to that point in other situations. So It's just funny though. You have to keep that scene in though for that line.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you know what they say? They say write about what you know. I don't know. Sure. She might know a little something about how to murder somebody. Who's to say? We talked about Daniel's dog story, really, kind of pivotal final act moment there. And then we find out she's acquitted. She goes out for drinks with Vincent and her cronies instead of returning home to Daniel. And then we get the distanced connection between her and Daniel, and then she lies down on the bed with Snoop at the very end of the movie. I just think there's a lot there in her decision to go out with Vincent and drink and not return home right away.
Well, she wanted home right away, though. I interpret it as like he didn't want her home.
But
right
if
then.
you're in her situation, don't you on some level like fight for that to be like, no, I would like to come home. I would like to see my son. I would like all of this to be behind us, and I would like Marge to go home so we can move on. Like, she doesn't even battle that. She's just like, oh, cool. I'm going to go out to dinner with Vincent. See you guys later? Come on.
I mean, I don't know that wasn't the tone that I took from that. And this kid just learned so much shit about his parents that I think maybe it's more like, okay, cool. I'll give him his space. I am with people that I can, go out with and celebrate this acquittal.
Oh, interesting.
But I don't think it's like
totally differently.
Yeah, I don't think she's just like, fuck you, Daniel. I'm going out and getting drunk, like, go to sleep, you little bitch. Like, I think she's just like, all right, yeah, I get it if he needs some space. Because she was good about that when he was like, I just want to be alone. I think she was really receptive of that. It was just like, okay, I'll get my stuff and go. Like when he wanted her to leave the house. So That's how I took it. It could be completely wrong, but I took it as like the kid needs space. I get it. Like she's not bummed to go out to dinner by any means. Like she's not dreading it, but I don't think it was like a party or something like that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you because on one hand, like even if like my son was like like not yet or I'm a little uncomfortable still, like if I'm like, yo, I'm your mom, like I'm
Yeah.
coming home, like I want to come home, but also like yeah, if you want to give space, she's she's given hints that she would willing to do that, more than willing to do that, and to me, I don't even know what this is exactly trying to say outside of what it's on the surface, but when her and Vincent like share like that embrace
Yeah.
and a kiss there, and
Yeah.
I think it actually just came out that Sandra Hüller said that there was even like a sex scene there's supposed to be
Oh,
between
interesting.
them, but they removed it and they didn't include it in the movie. So that is which I think is a good choice,
That's
and it makes
smart.
that ending with her out for drinks with him even more interesting with their whole embrace and situation. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm in the middle of you two.
I think you just would react differently if you were an earnest, like wholehearted, loving mother. I don't know. Like that's just the way that I took that conversation. She just seemed to let it go quite easily. And of course, when she does leave for the weekend, she does so because Daniel asks her to do so, and she knows it's important for the trial, and she can't risk like having a mistrial at this point and all of these things. But what does she do? She goes to a hotel, she eats junk food, and watches a talk show about her. She is extremely self-consumed with how she's being perceived by everybody around her about this trial and like who she's being made out to be. Not just to Daniel, not to Vincent, not to the courts, but like to the broader public and the broader media, which I think is a really interesting like 30 seconds that we get of her like doing this in the hotel. So
Did you want her to be watching Babylon? What would you have preferred she had been watching?
100%. Yeah, if we could just get her to watch like the opening. Actually, if we could take the movie and get her to watch like the opening 30 minutes of Babylon, I'd watch that with her. And then I think we just make it a 3-hour
away
movie.
on snacks like it should have won best original score. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. Like,
100%. Damn.
All right.
What could have been. Okay, that's all we're going to cover specifically for this movie. I already said my true cinema moment, of course, is the argument. I think it's hard to deny that that's a lot of people's favorite moment of this film. Ben, true cinema moment for the movie?
I'm going to cheat. I have two, but they're both pretty short. One of the line deliveries that I loved the most is when she's arguing with Samuel's therapist, and she just says the phrase like, couples fight, sometimes you fight together, sometimes you fight alone. And I just thought that was really so interesting of like, are you having a fight where you guys are trying to come to a conclusion together, or are you battling out over something? I just really liked that delivery, and just like it's such a unique line. The other thing that my favorite part of the movie is, I think a smart director, and a lot of smart directors have done this. Hitchcock did it. Bong Joon-ho did it in Parasite quite a bit, but like they'll use the camera as the literal eyes of the audience and kind of like move around and stuff. And I fucking loved the shot of the first time Daniel's at the witness stand and both sides are talking to him, and the camera stays fixed on him.
Side to side.
So we're watching him, and then the camera itself moves from side to side to where he's looking, but he can't see anything. And so we don't get to see anything as the audience. We just get to look like in that direction. Like you have the camera angled that way. I just thought that stuff was so brilliant, and just like such a great use of camera right there, not to cut, not to do anything, but just like follow where he is hearing these sounds from. I loved that. That was just one of my favorite parts of the whole movie.
That's a great call out. Jonathan, what's your true cinema moment?
Well, the most rewatchable scene is definitely the argument. And I think that is for sure the scene. So I guess that would be it. But if I wasn't choosing that, then I would go with Daniel realizing that he was wrong about the tape, just for the reasons I already said. That was the first time where I felt shaken, where I was like, I am unstable watching this movie now. So if it's not the argument, it would be that scene.
I love that. All very good things to call out. Okay, last order of business here for this episode. We always talk about a different category associated with the Best Picture nomination that we're discussing. Today's episode, we're talking about Best Editing. Now, we're all in agreement that we think Anatomy of a Fall is going to win Best Original Screenplay, but I think we're going to talk about that when we talk about Maestro and keep things a little interesting and maybe kind of rehash that conversation about if it should have been in. Anatomy of a Fall, nominated for Best Editing, of course. The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things, and Oppenheimer. Jonathan, I'll start with you. Who do you think's going to win, and who would you have nominated if not for these five?
I think Oppenheimer wins this pretty easily.
Yeah.
Because I think, outside of, would be deserving, Oppenheimer is going to win Best Sound. And there's that correlation. I know it's not all the time, but certainly helps. And I mean, Oppenheimer is a beast. It's just a beast. It's a juggernaut. It's going to win Best Editing.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yep.
Ben? Okay.
I was to see what he would have nominated.
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay. We'll do that now.
Yeah, if you want. Yeah, if you would have changed anything.
So I would keep. These are all good, so I don't have a problem with any of them.
Yeah.
I would keep, for me personally, I would keep Anatomy and Oppenheimer. I would add Spider-Verse. I would add John Wick Chapter 4.
Nice. Yeah. I was totally going to say that. Awesome.
And the fifth slot, I can go with a lot of different things. I like Killers of the Flower Moon. I like The Holdovers. I don't know if I'm just trying to be different.
Should we nominate Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 for a third Academy Award?
I would not be opposed to it. I would not be opposed to that.
I like it.
I would not be opposed to that. I was thinking either Mission Impossible, The Killer, or Blackberry.
Bro, The Killer.
Yeah,
Let's fucking go. The Killer got absolutely snubbed this year.
Yeah.
Got nothing.
It's tough.
Ridiculous.
It's tough.
Ben, what about you?
Oppenheimer, without a doubt, is going to take it. For me, I'd probably keep most of these. If anything, I would swap out maybe Killers and The Holdovers, and I might put in Barbie, and I would definitely put in Ferrari. There's some great editing in that movie.
Fascinating. I agree with you guys. Oppenheimer's just going to steamroll this category. I don't even think it's really a contest anymore. I'd keep Oppenheimer. I'd keep Anatomy, of course. And I would actually keep Killers of the Flower Moon. I think it's pretty crucial for the tonality and the pace of that film.
Totally.
I get rid of The Holdovers. I get rid of Poor Things. I put in The Killer, and I put in John Wick 4. And I think that makes not necessarily for like a race because Oppenheimer's still going to win, but it's much more fascinating to be like, yes, The Killer and John Wick 4. Like they got recognized. They did it. The category's already done anyway. So like, why can't we just like recognize some other movies? You know,
have some fun.
I think have a little bit of fun. I think that'd be great. Okay, we've talked about Anatomy of a Fall. I've been looking forward to recording this podcast all day because those questions were just eating me up inside. And we've talked about this movie for 90 minutes now, and I don't think, at least personally, I'm not any closer to making a decision about how I feel about if she did it or not. So great. We've accomplished a lot and nothing at the same time. Feel good.
Just like a podcast should be.
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan, any closing thoughts on Anatomy of a Fall that you didn't get the chance to say?
I don't know. I felt like we really went through it. My closing thought was honestly going to be what you said, which is that I'm still completely open to hearing any argument on either side, and I might agree with you depending on the day. And that just adds to why I like this movie so much. There's nothing definitive here, really.
I think we're close. I don't think we're there, but I think Anatomy of a Fall is kind of close to being in the is Lydia Tarr real realm, where it's like this could happen. I could see this totally taking place and exactly playing out the way this film does. And I think that's a testament to the brilliance of the screenplay, which I think it's going to win. Yeah. Ben, closing thoughts? Anything?
Shout out Snoop Dogg. He was awesome. Snoop is great.
Incredible. Justine Triet, just really elite stuff. Not to mention Sandra Hüller, his name's Sandra in the movie, of course.
Yeah.
Samuel, the actor that plays Samuel, also named Samuel in real life. So just taken a screenplay and is like, hey, we're just going to keep you guys keeping the same names.
I like it.
I think that's great. I think that's really kind of ingenious stuff from her. Yeah, God, I love Anatomy of a Fall. The more that I talk about it, the more that I fall in love with this film. I had a blast talking with you guys about this. Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on this pod. Man, I really appreciate it. Listening to all of my completely unhinged and insane questions. If people want to find more of you, where can they find you at?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. Really enjoyed talking to you guys. I keep it pretty simple. Just you can type in The Film Drunk on YouTube, Twitter, Letterboxd, Instagram.
I love it.
Nice.
Easy to find.
Yeah, worth a follow. And I appreciate you liking my review of Argo. It really meant a lot. I put a lot of effort into that, and I said movies are so cooked, and you know what, doing pretty good on the old Letterboxd app there. So I feel good. Next week on the pod, we're embracing our inner writer, talking about American Fiction. Ben, we haven't seen this movie, man. This is the only Best Picture nominee I have yet to see.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I am excited to finally get around to it.
I've been waiting for the episode. I've been holding out to experience it with you.
Yeah, we're both going to come in fresh, so I think it's going to be good. I love it. What do you guys think about Anatomy of a Fall, and what's it going to be picking up at the 2024 Academy Awards? Is it going to win Best Picture? Again, I mean, that's a tough hill to climb, but we'll see. Maybe Best Original Screenplay. I think that's a lock for sure.
Yeah.
But let us know what you think on Twitter or Instagram. We're at 24 minutes of A24. You can also watch us on YouTube. We can see our beautiful faces break down these movies. Thank you, everybody, for your support. I am Ben Lawhorn.
And I am Ethan Simi. At least I didn't kill this podcast. Might have killed my husband. Didn't kill this podcast.